This is Plastic Adventures.
Hey everybody, it is Steve with the PATC, and I am joined as always by Doug. And on today's episode of the Sandbox, where we normally talk about toys, we are going to talk about, well, yeah, it's toys.
It's
It's
still
not
toys.
typical toys, but we're going to be talking about toys still because that's the only thing that's really interesting about us. Doug had a really good idea the other day about board games. You know, we don't give board games any credit. We don't talk about them enough. But when it comes to like the enjoyment of the 80s before good old Nintendo came around, Atari had long since retired. What did we fill our time with? We had the toys, but sometimes you got bored of the toys. So board games. And the 80s had a ton of them. We're not going to waste our time talking about really boring board games that I like Monopoly. But we are going to talk about some of the really cool and innovative board games that the 80s had to offer. I've got a few favorites. Doug's got some he's going to talk about too. So just to quantify what we're doing, this isn't like Chutes and Ladders board game, right? This is going to be like cool board games that had like innovations or something neat about them.
Absolutely. And so
Great.
they are, how I was thinking of them is they are board games that could be played as board games, but if you decided to play with them as a toy, you could still play with them as a toy.
Okay. Yeah, I'm game. I'm game. I got some ideas. You want to fire us off? Get us going at the beginning here.
So I'm going to start us off with what I think is the quintessential toy / board game, and is what is going to be used as like the divining rod for all of the rest of my games that we're going to be talking about.
Man, that's like a $10 word. Yeah.
Isn't it? Do I get extra points for that? That's cool. All right. So the first one I want to talk about is, I think, one of the big ones that everybody knows is Fireball Island. Can you see that come across?
Yes, I can. And you know what? We had kind of talked a little bit about these things at the before we came on air. And I was thinking Fireball Island, man, I know that. And you said, dude, Steve, when you see these, you're going to remember them.
Yep.
I remember this. I remember this. These were like marbles that went down a little track or something there and chased the game pieces. Yes.
So this board game, so the board was a piece of plastic. What's the process called when they make it form-fitting plastic? What is it called?
Vacuform.
Vacuform. Thank you. It's a piece of vacuform plastic that was made to look like an island, and so this little tiki head sat on the mountain and then spat fireballs at the players. And as a kid, you're looking at that and you're just going, I need to have that. Mom, Dad, I need to have this game, because it's so unusual compared to the other games that were out at the time. Literally three-dimensional.
Yeah.
And it was like a different game every time you played. You wanted to play it over and over and over again.
Yeah, as I recall, the premise was that those cards would give you movement. And then if you drew the wrong card, you had to push a button or something, and it would send one of those little red marbles coming in any direction. And if your guy was caught there, he had to go back to the beginning.
Yeah, and so you had to start at the little boat and work your way up around to the island, steal the jewel, and bring the jewel all the way back down to the boat. So it was an Indiana Jones-esque type of adventure, right?
Yeah.
Which is really what it is. I mean, look at the word, the font. I mean, it's Indiana Jones, people. That's what this is. But you get a pink Indiana Jones, so the girls can play.
Yeah, that's right. They couldn't if there wasn't a pink playing piece.
That's right. They needed a pink one in order to play. So I went out and tried to find some good pictures of it. There are a lot of good pictures, but the ones I found, I think, give you a really good idea for what this game was like. And if you'd never played it, if you missed out on this, good luck getting this game now, because it's around $350.
Oh, fudge! Seriously?
It's not a cheap game. There is another one that's out that's a little cheaper. That was a Kickstarter a couple years ago. You can find that one for about $60, I think, and that's a little more budget friendly. And it's actually a little bit. I played it at our local like comic book convention, and it's got a way bigger board and way more options on it. But nothing is like the original. If
yeah, I love those little bridges. Love the little bridges and the little Indiana Jones Explorer guys in there. So you were talking about like playing with it like a toy. I mean, really
not playing with this as a toy.
Yeah. Well, when you're a kid, you look at like plastic army guys, right? The little green army guys, and you think in the 80s that's so unsophisticated. But you can literally have one plastic army guy and dirt and make up something cool that's happening. So, yeah, that is pretty rad, man. I love it. Yeah.
I'm like, if we're going to talk about these as how I envision them, this has got to be the first one that we start off with.
No, I love it. That's actually like the epitome of what we're talking about.
Exactly.
I didn't bring pictures because my screen sharing abilities as of last time, not stellar at all. You had to walk me through it. I felt like my wife was telling me like, how to open an email.
You're like this.
That's yeah. But anyways, that's a great one to start off with because that isn't just the gimmick. There's like some built-in like toy type play features in there.
Yep.
Well, one that had stuck in the back of my mind that I thought was really cool, and I never got to have it as a kid. I always wanted it. It was the Masters of the Universe Battle for Eternia game. And what was very unique about that is something that I love about one of my other selections. But not only did you have this board that you could move about on, you had to do battle with Skeletor and his forces. They didn't have any injection molded figures like Fireball Island, but they did have these stands with a cardboard guy that went on the stand. But if you take the cardboard guy off, there were these two little clamps so that you could play with your Masters of the Universe figures instead.
Oh, good idea. I did not know that.
No, it's freaking awesome. And one of the better parts about it, you earn these little tokens as you play the game. And like I said, I don't have the game. I wish I did, but a lot of the collectors have bought the game because it came with like 12 plastic stands or something. And I mean, the He-Man figures are hard to stand up on their own. They got little teeny tiny feet and gigantic upper bodies.
Yeah,
so a lot of people
have like a warped rubber band on the inside of their leg where they got a janky leg going off the other way.
Yeah, probably one of the best contributions aside from that figure stand is this little thing.
The gold power sword.
This is a gold power sword. Yep. It is a gold power sword. It is just like this gray power sword.
But if I remember right,
flip them over, this is half a sword. This is whole.
Yep.
So you actually got like a whole He-Man power sword front and back. It's about the same profile as the regular power sword, but you actually got a full round handle on there.
Yeah.
That your figures could hold onto and play with. And the game came with, I think, like 16 of these things.
Oh my goodness.
So, yeah, I know. You could like sneak one out if you were like me. And this little gray piece of plastic got lost in about 8 seconds after you open the figure. So Battle for Eternia was really, I thought it was kind of innovative because it's inviting your toys to come and play with the board game. A game like that, it sort of puts a structure in place. So when you're playing with your friends, you've got these hard and fast rules. You don't have the kid that like, does a bunch of fake stuff when you're playing with the toys so that they can win, like fly He-Man around and you can't get him. And, just stuff that like Jeffrey would do. So, like, not that I'm holding a grudge or anything, but, this kid that I knew.
If you're watching, man,
he's not. He's so not. So, yeah, Battle for Eternia. If you guys haven't seen it before, check it out. It's actually really, really cool. I want to say there was a couple of these Masters of the Universe games, and one of them had just this oddball, like, plastic bingo grid, and it didn't look nearly as fun. So Battle for Eternia is super cool.
An honorable mention in the He-Man and Masters of the Universe board game world I actually have, where are they at? They're right there. They're two. I have two versions of them. They're the 3D action adventure game, where the board would spin.
Okay.
Go backwards and forwards, and it was basically, it's a really easy game. Like, it's made for 6-year-olds, so right up my alley. And so I could hit the spinner, move my guy, and spin the board, and have hours and hours of fun. So honorable mention for board games that are almost toys.
Yeah, somewhat. The new Battle for Eternia is really cool. The one that they've just released. It was on Kickstarter. It comes with like 24 injection molded little plastic minis. I love minis. I don't play tabletop because it's way too much money to play tabletop. But there's been all these kickstarted mini games like Masters of the Universe and Transformers, G.I. Joe. Yeah. And they've now got some companion, really crappily written role-playing games to go with them. But yeah, so there is a new Battle for Eternia, and it's pretty cool. But you got to play with the little 1.5-inch tall minis that come with it. It's nothing that like innovates your toys and invites them to come in and hang out with your board game. So what's next on your list?
All right, what's next on my list is this is going to be another one that's going to open a memory in your game. You have to. There's one called Crossbows and Catapults.
Yeah, I remember seeing the commercials for this as a kid, and the premise was just to knock your other players down, right?
Yeah, that's really it. You build a wall, you have a fortress, and you're trying to knock down as many of these flags as you can, right? So you got these discs that can launch from either this crossbow or this catapult, hence the name, and you would be 6 or 7 feet apart from your opponent, and then you just take turns launching at each other's fortress. And there were add-ons to this game. You could get other versions of it and make your fortress bigger and better, and you can get different ones. I think there was like a horse. There was like you see a minotaur, a giant.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Like
just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And this game was really big for a long time, and then it went out. Nobody played it anymore. And then there was a Kickstarter, I think, earlier this year to bring back Crossbows and Catapults. And I hope it does come back, because that was a badass game. When you talk about little figures that don't do anything, like plastic army men, like what you were talking about, this is like taking it to the next level.
This doesn't even look like a board game to me. This just looks like a super rad toy.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what it is. It's a board game that's also a toy.
Only 6 feet apart, launching projectiles. That's pretty freaking sweet. I love it.
It is very cool. And I had one as a kid, so of course I played with it and didn't care about it as much as I should have, and lost pieces of it everywhere. So and now when I go back to look, hey, why don't I go back and find that game? Yeah, that's another expensive game, Steve.
Is that about Tree Fitty?
That's about Tree Fitty.
Yeah. That's so old. That's like way freaking old. I'm just discovering Tree Fitty.
Oh, but everybody remembers this game. Everybody played with this game during our childhood. So, I mean, yeah, it makes sense that this game would be that much, because if anybody played with it the way I did, we battered the crap out of it, right?
Oh,
and
yeah.
Not only did we like have crossbows and catapults, I remember my friends going, hey, let's bring in tennis balls, and hey, let's try to shoot BB guns.
That'll really get them.
Yeah. So, I mean, we went crazy with it, but I would love to have an original one of these now, because it just brings back so many good memories.
That's pretty awesome, dude. There was a lot of these games that I saw the commercials for, but when it would come time to spend that very meager allowance once a month when the welfare check showed up, I just couldn't do it. Like it was
high on the priority list.
Yeah, it was G.I. Joe or He-Man or whatever the flavor of the 10 minutes before the shopping trip was.
Yeah.
But I really, there was that, and like Hungry Hippos and Crossfire that were on commercials a lot.
Crossfire. So that was one. Let's talk about that one real quick. I'll bring that one up. since you brought that up. All right.
Yeah. So Crossfire. Yep. I remember this one. And this is actually in stores today.
Yeah. You can actually go and get this game. This game is not expensive. You can go online. You can get it from Amazon. You can get it from pretty much anywhere, I think. And you can get it sent to your home. But the premise of this game was actually really cool. So you had this arena with these two targets, and one was a triangle, one was a star, and the whole premise of the game was to shoot these metal friggin' balls out of this gun and try to hit your target into your goal on the other side, while defending your goal from trying to get the other guys in yours. So this game was basically just rapid firing and rapid reloading. That was pretty much the premise of this game.
Yeah, but you got some strategy though too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this game I thought was incredibly cool as a kid. You know, you got to reach in and grab all those little beat marbles out of there, because you're going to go through them like gangbusters. And you got to be really strategic about how you spend them to shoot. Otherwise, you got nothing to defend yourself with. Yeah, I love that Hasbro brought this back.
Yeah.
And I think Hungry Hippos came back too. But what I enjoy more about this is there's a little bit deeper element of play, whereas Hungry Hippos had this cool action feature built in, but all you had to do is just keep slamming the handle until all the marbles showed up in your tray. So this is actually a really, really cool game. Very simple premise.
Mm-hmm. But this is also one of those games where you know the memes that you can't hear a picture. I can hear this picture. I can hear the metal balls shooting across. I can hear what that sounds like rolling across the plastic. I remember this game very, very vividly.
Yeah, I want to say the byproduct of this game was like 30% more alcohol consumption at certain times of the day. For mom at home, dad at home, whatever it was, because this thing's loud.
It is very loud. It's very loud, but it's actually worth it. I didn't think about picking it up, but you know, now the more that we're talking about it, maybe it might be worth putting on my Christmas list.
Yeah. So what do you consider Rock'em Sock'em Robots? Do you think that that's a board game, or do you just think that's?
I think that one's
not a toy or a board game, right?
That one's more of a toy than a board game, I think.
Yeah, I think so too.
You know, I want board game to have a little bit of skill, a little bit of thinking to go behind it. Rock'em Sock'em Robots is just, you know, and that's pretty much it. So I think that's more of a toy than an actual board game.
Operation. What do you think about that one?
That one's a board game. That's annoying as hell though, but it's a board game.
But you know, it was really good for manual dexterity. There was a hidden benefit to that game.
His nose red, man.
Yeah, some of those pieces were insane to get out of there. I think like there was a monkey wrench or something that was really tough.
You know, there was one other game that I think caused more stress than Operation. You remember the game Anticipation?
I knew you were going to say that with the timer.
That game was the cause of stress for a lot of children, I think. Not knowing when that damn thing was going to go off and pop up and blow all the pieces off into your face. So yeah, that's nightmare-inducing stuff.
Yeah, I remember that too, because that had this like, is the timer is.
Yeah, but then when it would get closer, like the timer would go slower, and then it would speed up. Pop.
Yep. And I'm still
like
trying to stick
before it would pop.
Still trying to stick the triangle into the square. Yeah, well, it goes in there. I know it fits.
So much stress.
Yeah. So those weren't, none of those were on my list to talk about, but I guess we got to get those out there.
Yeah.
The other one that I wanted to talk about, much along the same vein as the Masters of the Universe Battle for Eternia, but it was even a little bit less linear than that game, and that was the G.I. Joe Commando Attack game. I know there were a couple G.I. Joe games. Commando Attack was a very simple premise. You had a board, and it was separated by like this riverbank thing, and it was a capture the flag sort of a thing. And it did come again with a bunch of these little plastic stands and cardboard figures that plugged in, but all the plastic stands had pegs for your figures to be in. So you can bring your figures in and you have these plastic stands. But the added dimension, what really put this one high up on my list to like number 2 of the 3 big ones I wanted to bring up, was the fact it had a really kind of a cool rock, paper, scissors game that you played to resolve the combat. You had these cards, your offense and defense cards. And what you would do is you would just take a card. If you're on offense, you pick one of the 3, you slap it down, somebody puts a defense card down, and when you flip it over, you see what it says. Okay. It was shoot high, shoot, or shoot low.
Gotcha.
And then they had duck, jump, or dodge. So, it was a rock, paper, scissors to resolve it. There wasn't a lot of skill involved in that, because unless you were double teaming somebody and you had like 2-on-1, and then your odds are still the same.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
It was a really, really cool idea. And it came with these little cardboard bivouacs and all this kind of cool stuff.
They had like pop-up like tents or something. I remember the board being a little bit more 3-dimensional.
Yeah. And I first encountered this. I never knew about it when I was a kid. But when I was in middle school, still playing with G.I. Joe, secretly at my buddy's house because we were supposed to like girls, but they don't have toys. So
girls have different toys.
Not until later, right? Until they had their fill of boys. But anyways, that was an incredibly fun game. And I think it came with something like 12 of those little stands, but you didn't even need them if you had the black plastic ones or the accessory pack ones that came with it. It was just another really fun way to play with those toys. And it was structured so that you really couldn't cheat. And it was something that resolved in like 15, 20 minutes around, or it could be an hour while you're trying to figure it out. Because if somebody's capturing the flag and you get them before they get back over, then you get the flag back. So then sometimes it might be I guess it'll never end in a draw. Somebody's got to win in the end, but very, very neat game. And those actually can be had still for like between like 40 and 80 bucks. And even down at 40, it's complete with the pieces, except there was this patch that came with it. I think a Flint patch.
Oh,
and everybody always takes the patch out of the game. So I've been so close to pulling the trigger.
I don't ever remember playing it, but I remember seeing ads for it. So
yeah, this thing, it's still so cheap that there's no excuse not to own it, other than I see it and then I see something else. I
see something else. Yeah.
I keep telling myself, if I spot it at a convention or something, like one of these toy shows, I'll buy it there. But I think I'm running out of time on that. I really just got to bite the bullet and pick one up.
Just pick one up. Yeah. All right. Let's talk about my next one. And this is one I've talked with you about before.
Oh, yes. Yes. The way more fun than Battleship game. Yeah.
So if you've never heard of this is called Torpedo Run. And the premise of this is very simple. You have like a 3x3 map that you place on the ground. And you have 2 opposing teams, one dark gray, one tan, I think it is, or light gray. And the point of this game is to see these 2 little submarines here?
Yeah.
Is to move around the board, try to position your submarine in such a way that it shoots these little red discs into these tiny little slots at the base of each of these ships.
Oh God.
And then if you aim it just right and the disc goes in, they're on these little rubber band hair triggers, right? So it'll hit that hair trigger, and then the island on the ship will blow off. So it'll look
that's awesome.
Yeah. So you would set up your ships over here in different patterns, and then you have your submarines would shoot from behind these lines here. Your submarines couldn't go past these lines. So then you would try to shoot the opposing forces' ships. And that was basically the game.
Was there any rule in place? Could you reposition ships, or they were just you positioned them at the beginning of the game and that was it?
So to tell you the truth, it's been a long time since I played this game. I got it for Christmas, I think, back in 80 something, 87, 80, okay. I think is what it was. So, and this was one of those games where if you didn't, like, I had like 2 neighborhood friends, and if I could never find them to play with, I would break out this game and start playing by myself and just try to shoot the ships, right?
Right.
So, I can't remember if you could move bigger ships or not, or if they were in place once you put them in place. I can't remember. But I do remember having many times where I'd be pissed that I would launch the disc and be like, it would go into the slot and hang out like just a little bit. Like I didn't shoot it strong enough.
Right.
Well, yeah. Or
that looks
go
awesome,
in, but
man.
nothing would happen. And you're like, damn it.
I know I remember seeing this in the store. Between what was it? Between this and like crossbows and catapults, there was kind of this thing for like gigantic board games that take up space on the floor.
Yeah.
I see the logo on there that says Floor Wars. Yep. That's a rad game. I am shocked that something like that still isn't out there today to buy.
Well, you can try.
We're getting to the money part there.
Expensive games. You can find parts of them and try to piece one together. But eventually it probably cost just as much if you just went out and found the game itself and tried to buy it whole. But is it worth getting today? No. Was it worth getting back then? Absolutely. And I loved this game.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So what else you got there?
Oh, I think I've got 2. Okay, we did that one. Okay, I've got one more. Okay.
Yep, me too. I got one more.
This was a good one. Let me share my screen for this one too. All right. So this one is called Thunder Road.
Yeah. You were talking about this the other day, the whole Mad Max knockoff thing. Yeah.
And that's basically what it is. It's like a Mad Max, mad military type of game. And the idea is to make it past Thunder Road. So you get 2 of these roads and you would connect them. And then you would, as you would move down the road and move off of one board, you would move the other board to the other side. So it was just like a continuing board road.
Oh, that is cool.
Yeah. And the whole thing was to knock out your other opponent's forces off Thunder Road. So it was a battle, a rolling battle dice game of chance for battle and defense. But I mean, dude, this is what makes these kind of games so good. Like they're not just cardboard cutout card pieces. You got actual helicopters with spinning blades. You've got Mad Max type of vehicles with, I mean, when my friend had this game, I didn't want to play it. I didn't want to play it as a game. I just wanted to sit on the floor and pretend it was Mad Max.
Yeah, I look at this and all I hear is dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun. I mean, there's even the last of the V8 Interceptors in there.
Yeah,
right next to that little dune buggy that should have like some little molded figure with assless chaps.
But then there were these cars that were like burned out husks that you would put on the side of the roads to kind of impede the other players, right? So
yeah, I see that. Yep.
This is another one of those games where it's like, yeah, it classifies as a board game, but it also classifies as a toy because
oh yeah, man, like how did we get so many of these things in the 80s? How did we get so many board games like this, and where have they gone?
Well, I'll tell you, I think the missing factor in all of this is we need to bring cocaine back into the boardrooms where these guys come up with these ideas, because I think that's the missing link.
Yeah, I mean, they've got all these engineers and 3D modelers and everything. We need some effing coke, man. That's what we need.
We need an off-the-wall idea for these engineers to go, I can do that.
Yeah, we need We need an exec to get coked out of his mind and watch The Road Warrior. Or any other drugged out of his mind and bring back a game like this. I mean, you could do it with like Fast and the Furious. I bet you'd just have a bunch of Hot Wheels cars and somebody could pretend to be Vin Diesel not dying over and over again.
I honestly can't think of any other reason why we got these games in the first place. So yeah, the 80s was special because of things like this. It wasn't just the cartoons we got because those were great. It wasn't just the toys we got because those were great. It wasn't the games. Those were great. The TV, the movies, it was all of it together, right? There's no one aspect of it that you can go, oh, that's what made the 80s great. No. It was everything that happened all at once, all at that time, which is why it was so great.
I think you're right. And I mean, we've talked about a few licensed games, but Fireball Island and what was that, Thunder Alley or Thunder Road?
Thunder Road. No
license. Obviously, they took some creative direction, but I mean, that's cool as hell, man. I wish that we still had that today.
Yep.
I'm playing Monopoly and Carcassonne. Carcassonne's like an old person's game where you drink and flip over little cardboard tiles. That's it.
If somebody brought this to like, hey, we're having game night, and the guy's like, oh, okay, I'll bring some games, and he thops down Thunder Road on the board, I'm playing it. I'm playing that.
Yeah, I'll play that instead of Munchkin any day. Yeah. Yeah. So the last one that I had to talk about, I think it was 1990 when this came out, if I remember right. So we're technically not an 80s game, but it warrants mentioning because it really opened up the door for me to role-playing games in general. I didn't know how much fun you could have sitting around with your buddies until I played Hero Quest. Hero Quest is a configurable dungeon for those of you who haven't seen it. It's a big board. It's got all these rooms, and there's like 12 different stages, and it comes with different tiles that establish doors, walls, etc., etc. It comes with a whole bunch of injection molded minis of all kinds of goblins and ghosts and orcs, ogres, chaos knight, the mage, the gargoyle, and you had 4 heroes, and each one of them had unique things that they could do. And what was really cool about this is every character had a really special role to play. And the game was not very easy if you tried to solo it. You really need like 2 to 3 people playing and cooperating with each other. But it gave you elements of a role-playing game like dice resolved combat. You just had simple dice, 6-sided dice. They had like a white skull, a white shield, a black skull, a black shield, and maybe like one more white skull on there. The black was for the bad guys, the white was for the good guys, and it was tilted for the good guys, but you just roll the dice. White skull is countered by black shield, and if not, it hits the bad guy. Some of the bad guys had 1 hit point, some of them had 2 or 3. They had bosses at the end of each level, but it was super, super light because you're not managing skills or anything, and it's not derived off of a stat tree. You just had these characters that were more powerful attackers with no defense, or good attackers, or you had the mage. The elf was kind of a blend. He had magic and he could fight. So it was a really unique game. I managed to get one for like $60 that was missing one little injection molded skull.
Oh.
But I mean, it had bookcases and altars and furniture and treasure chests and just all kinds of stuff. And there was a narrative that the DM, there was one dungeon master that sort of like did it all. And I mean, you could keep track of where you were. You finish this dungeon, you could move on to dungeon 6 after that, and it followed a narrative all the way through. So it was amazing and super advanced and super simple at the same time. Did you ever play that, Doug?
Yeah, absolutely, I did. So the game, I think, it was at its best when you had, at the very least, 3 people. You had your DM, and then you had two players. And I think that was, that's like the bare minimum that you would need in order to make this game really, really fun. Because it's really no fun with 2 players, with one being the DM and then one trying to solo a dungeon, which you really can't do.
You can't. Too many monsters. Like the odds are against your favor. Yeah,
totally. So you wouldn't have a lot of fun. But the greatest thing about this is that this game was ready to play right outside of the box. There was no you know, a hard leveling of a character. There was no like difficult character creation where you had to sit around for hours to create a character and go through all these different things just before you even got to play the game. This game was like you open the box, you decided who was who, you got your little player characters, and the DM said level 1, let's go. And
yep. You could buy equipment as you went on that would help you in the game, but it was just really basic stuff. You could get treasure cards, you could get potion cards that refilled your hit points. It was just really, really innovative, and it's so good. Hasbro finally rebooted it and did a crowdfunding thing on Pulse. I want to say it uses the same mechanics as the original, and they've done all these expansions, and every time I walk into a GameStop or a game store, I see it sitting there and I'm like, God, I have you. I could buy you just for the minis.
Oh, you should, because the one we got for Spencer is gorgeous.
Oh, you got him the new one, huh?
Yeah, he brings it over every once in a while, and we sit and play it. It's right out of the box. You can play it. It's a wonderful game.
It's an amazing game, and plus it came with plastic army guys that you could play with on the tiles. Like if it was a thing like that. I mean, it was meant for kids that are maybe 8 years or older that could actually like take turns and do that. But
if you were on your own, let's say you're like, I can't find anybody to play with, I'll set up a dungeon and I could play with these like toys, and you totally could. So
yeah,
we're
under a minute. We've managed to talk about board games of all things for our allotted time. So where are we at here? Hit you up on Instagram as the Toyman 80s. Come over to Facebook, look for Plastic Adventures. Comment on the video. What was your favorite board games? Which ones did we miss? Which ones were we right about that you're wrong about? And if we don't hear from you there, if we don't get any comments or anything, then we'll look for you in the toy aisle. So check you later.